You might not recognize what's in front of me here. It's a sawhorse outfeed table. Years ago when I got started in the cabinet business, this is what we used instead of big, huge outfeed tables around our saw. And we were able to do all of the work we needed to do with these small, versatile, and very easy to move around sawhorse outfeed. Well, not too long ago, I was doing a service project out of state, and in that shop, there was a sawhorse outfeed table just like this. And we had comments as to what it was and where we could find one. You've got to build your own. You can't buy these. And so that's what we're going to show you how to do today on Woodworking with Wes. We're now getting ready to do that portion of our sawhorse, the top portion, the barrel portion. I just wanted to explain a little bit about the wood that we're going to be using. The solid wood that we're going to be using is just pine. I purchased this from my hardwood supplier. It came rough sawn 1x12s. We've planed it down to 13/16. We've jointed one edge and cut the other edge to parallel it up. So we have S4S 13/16, and it's about 10 inches wide. We're going to be cutting it into sizes, so that isn't really that important. But just so that you know that we're going to be working with 13/16 thick pine to get started. Now, our top portion of our sawhorse is going to be 22 inches wide, and it's going to be 48 3/4 inches long. The first thing that we have to do to start to create that piece is to do the end pieces, and there are 2 ribs in the middle of it that are going to be support for the round top. I drew out what those pieces are going to look like, and those are the first pieces that we're going to cut. It's very faint here, but what I did is I measured 22 inches long and drew a straight edge. Then I divided it in half, 11 inches here, and I went up 4 inches on the side, and that's going to be our side pieces. They're going to be 4 inches high. And I drew up to 8 inches high on the center, and I drew a line from 4 to 8 so that I had a pyramid effect pyramid effect here. And then I came in 4 inches on the side, 3.5 inches, on the side, and I made a mark 3.5 inches, and I made an arch so that we could have a smooth, round top. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cut 4 pieces that are 22.5 inches long, or 22 inches long, and we're going to cut those on our saw sled. So let's do those first. We're getting ready to do our saw sled cut, 22 inches. Now I have put a sacrificial block here because I don't want to cut this against my fence because then it could bind. By putting a little sacrificial block there, by the time I run this through, it'll be past the block and there won't be any pressure against my board here to cause anything to bind. So we're going to, like I say, now the first thing we're going to do is cut 4 of these blocks. After I cut them to length, I ripped them to 8 inches wide. We're now getting ready to cut our pyramid, our angle pieces on here. And I'm going to do that on a little jig, and I'll show you the jig here in just a minute. But we're going to go ahead and cut all 4 of those pieces the same way. So let's do that next. We're getting ready now to cut our angle pieces. We're just going to use a jig, a homemade jig that I make that holds my board at an angle. What I did is I went and I marked 4 inches on the side and 8 inches on the top, and I lined those 2 marks up with the edge of my base piece, and then I nailed a cleat on the back side to hold my board in that position, and we'll run that through the saw like this. It will take that piece off, then we'll flip it around, and we'll do the same thing on the other side, and that will give our 2 angle cuts on the top, and we'll do that on all 4 pieces. With our 4 ribs cut with our pyramid shape, we now are ready to cut our little angle, and we'll just do that with our jigsaw. Okay, we'll complete that cut on our other 3 pieces, and then we're going to sand the round on all pieces together so that they all match up. Once I had my arch cut with my jigsaw, I plugged in my palm sander, clamped all 4 pieces together, and took my palm sander and sanded around the top, all 4 of them together, so that now my arch pieces are all the same and ready to go. We'll take those apart now, and we'll get ready to assemble the top. First thing we need to do is to cut the sides. We need 2 sides that are the length to make this 48 3/4. And the way we're going to check that measurement is we're going to put 2 pieces together, and we're going to lay our tape measure out here, 48 3/4, just like that. And that inside measurement here is going to tell us how long to cut that stretcher, and our stretcher will be 47 1/8. And we're going to cut it just a little bit more than 4 inches high so that we can mark the angle on there, because we're going to cut the top of that at an angle that matches the angle on our end pieces. We cut our side piece just a little taller than our 4-inch end cut so that we could put a little bit of an angle on here. And the way we're going to find that angle is we're just going to make a little mark with our pencil. And that's the angle we need to have. It's not even a real true angle. We determined that the angle of our saw blade needed to be 20 degrees. We set our saw fence at 4 inches, and we're now just going to take a little nibble off the top of there that will match up with the angle on the end of our ribs. There's our cut right there. Let's see how well we ended up. There we are. Pretty good. Looks good. So we'll go ahead and nail the end pieces on either end of our 2 side rails. You can see now how we're starting to create the top of our round top sawhorse, our barrel section, and we're going to nail our end pieces into our side pieces. Now, the one thing that you will probably notice is that we have put our side pieces on the outside of our end pieces on the outside, which is going to make our center pieces too long. We're going to go back to our saw sled, and we're going to take 13/16 off of the ends of our center barrel pieces, and they are going to be nailed in like this. And that will create our structure to allow us to now bend our piece over the top. So let's go that far. Let's get this nailed together, get our other pieces cut and nailed in, and then when we get everything all done and cut, we're going to go back with some 1¼ inch screws, and we're going to secure all our corner pieces, all our joints with screws, so they'll be nailed together and screwed, not glued, but be good and solid. So let's go ahead and get started with that. This is just a flush joint here, flush butt joint, just like that. We'll move it down there and move this one over. You can begin to see how that's going to come together. The other side is going to look just like that. In fact, we can turn this around like this, bring this piece over here and nail this in, and that will complete our initial box. Then we'll cut those pieces down. We're going to measure those in so that they're equal, so that our ribs are the equal distance apart. That'll give us plenty of support for and we're going to put a piece of 1/4 inch over the top of that. But we're going to get to that in just a minute. But right now, let's just get the rest of this put together. Okay, we have completed the structure of our top of our barrel piece. We nailed the corners together. We've cut and nailed in these pieces. We went back and screwed all of our joints together with a 1 1/4 inch screw. I put screws in the ends and across the tops. I also added a corner squaring block to make sure that our top is square. And that just helps in the final construction. Now we could go ahead now and put the top on, but I think the next thing I want to do is make our legs and get our legs the right size. We're not going to go ahead and attach them until after we get the top part done, but we're going to go ahead and get them built so that when we get all done we can attach them. What we want the top of our sawhorse to be is level with the top of our table, so on our table saw, so that when we slide things across our table, it goes across top of our sawhorse. We have a 1/4 inch piece of melamine that is that's going to go across the top of this, and then it's going to have a piece of formica on top of it. We'll get to that and show you all of that in a little bit, but for measurement purposes we need to add 1/4 of an inch to the top of this in order to get our measurements for our legs. So let's go ahead and measure the height of our table. Whoop, I gotta have my glasses. Now we can see what a tape measure looks like. Uh-oh. All right, there we are. We'll measure from the floor to our table, and according to my measurement, we are 34 5/8. Now my garage floor isn't exactly level, but 34 5/8 is a good measurement to start with. If we're not exactly right as far as level on here, that's just fine, because our sawhorse being round allows us to slide things across and just hold them down tight to our tabletop, which is where our cutting takes place anyway. This is just a support for our pieces that we work. So 34 5/8 is what we want the top of our sawhorse to be. 34 5/8. So if we stand this up on edge like this, get these screws out of the way. What we want to be is we want to be 34 5/8 to the top minus the 1/4 of an inch. So 34 3/8 to the top of our sawhorse, which means our legs need to be exactly 28 inches from the floor to this level right here. All right, 28 inches. Now, we want our legs, at the base of our legs, we want our legs to be the 22 inches wide so that it lines up. But we want them to come in at a little bit of an angle, and then they're going to screw to the inside of this. So our legs need to be a little longer than 28, maybe about 30 inches long, cut at an angle on both ends. I'm going to cut one piece, and we're going to put a 5-degree angle on it. Now, I think our legs need to be about 3.5 inches wide. That just sounds good to me. I've cut a couple of pieces of pine that are about the right length to get started. We're going to go ahead and cut those to width at 3.5, and then we're going to make some preliminary cuts to see if our 3.5 inch by 28 inch with a 5-degree angle is going to work for us. Okay, so that is going to work just fine. Let's set our saw at 3.5 inches, and let's just cut one for right now until we can get everything worked out the way we want it to. So here goes one. We're just going to use our push fence and set our push fence at 5 degrees, which I have already done. And let's take a 5-degree cut off of this end. With our 5-degree angle cut at this end, we'll now go ahead and cut it to length. And like I say, we want to have a little bit to screw to the inside. We need to have 28 inches beyond the base or the bottom of our sawhorse. So let's set this at 31 inches and make a preliminary cut at 31 inches. And now we have kept this at 5 degrees. Whoops, we got to move our fence out of the way. We don't want to be cutting our fence with our saw. Let's make sure we're okay there. Yep, we're good. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's make a 31-inch cut and check ourselves. The main thing that we have to worry about is our block that we put in here for squaring. Now, let's just kind of set that in there a little bit like that. Let's take a measurement here. We want to be 28 inches. We're just going to give ourselves a little mark there to make sure that we have 28 inches beyond this level right here, and see how we line up. Now I can see that mark. You can't, but I can. So let's let that mark in there. And I can see that 31 inches is going to be too long. I think we're going to need to be more like 30.5 inches. So let's go back here. And let's reset our fence at 30.5 inches. And let's make another little cut. Whoop, let's turn it around here so it's right. You want to make sure your cuts are parallel to each other. Your angle cuts are parallel. Okay, so we want that to be to the outside. And there's our little mark there. And that is going to work out really well. 30.5 inches is the length we need to make all of our legs. So let's go ahead and finish cutting our legs at 30.5 inches. Now I went ahead and cut some additional pieces, 3.5 inches wide. I put a 5-degree cut at the end on the end of each one of them. Now that we know the length, I can go ahead and cut the remainder of our legs 30.5. Okay, now we have our legs all cut 30.5 inches. Let's set this out of the way. The base of our legs are going to go together like this. Now this is upside down. This will be the floor. This will be the top of the sawhorse over here. We want to be 22 inches out here. And so that's just a little bit wider than 22, so that's right about there. Now, I have a nice square edge here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this 5-degree block here, and I'm going to line it up with the edge of my table. And that's going to give me, let's see, somewhere around here I had some clamps. Here's our clamp. Okay, now that we have this lined up, we put this piece to it. We're going to clamp the end of our leg to my bench, just like that. Oh, I'm stuck on a support piece here. No, I guess I wasn't. All right, let's get back to where we were. This piece is level. This piece is tight to it. Okay, now we want to be 22 inches out here to this piece, and we're going to do the exact same thing, opposite direction. We're going to put this piece on the table. We're going to line it up. We're going to put our leg to it, and this is going to be the angle of our legs. Let's make sure that our measurement is correct. It is right there. Let's hurry and clamp that down before it gets away from us. Now let's measure the top of our legs, 17 inches. Well, that's just about right where we want to be. That's perfect. This will fit on the inside of our end piece, and it'll screw through to the inside of our end piece. just like that. Now we need to have a stretcher down here and a little piece up here at right at 28 inches to make sure that when we put this together, that we're level on both ends. So let's put us a stretcher piece down here. Let's make our stretcher piece 20 inches long, and it will have a 5-degree cut on both ends. So our stretcher piece will let's grab a couple of these scraps here. And let's just say that this would be our stretcher piece, like right here. And it would be 20 inches long total. It would have a 5-degree cut on both sides. And then we'll screw it to the leg. And that'll give us the initial cut there. And then we'll cut a piece that will be 28 inches from the bottom up to here on both sides, and we'll put a thinner piece across there that will butt up against the bottom of this when we get ready to install our leg, when we get it ready to assemble after we've put our top together. And all we have to do is just take our leg, slide it in there, it'll fit right up tight against it, we'll attach it to the inside, and our leg is attached. Then there's some support pieces, but we'll show you the support pieces when we get that far. Right now, let's get our legs put together. Here is our stretcher piece that we have cut. It's 20 inches from here to here. Our angles are opposite now in order to bring our legs in at an angle. We have determined that we need to measure from the bottom of our leg up 10 3/4 of an inch and then attach our stretcher piece. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to attach our stretcher piece at 10 3/4 of an inch up, and we're going to do it on both sides. That'll give us our angle, and then we'll measure up the rest of the 28 inches from the bottom for our next piece. We'll go ahead and get our legs put together that far. Okay, we went ahead and completed the legs so that I can show you how it all goes together. This is what the leg looks like from the outside. We have our base cross piece. This cross piece goes right underneath, and I'll show you how that's going to attach. We're going to lay that down. When we get all done putting the top on, we'll lay that down. We'll just slide this in. You can see how that just exactly gives us the measurement that we want. We'll center it and put it on there and screw it to the inside of our piece. The next part we have to do is we have to make our 1/4 inch piece of melamine. What we're going to do is we're going to kerf cut. Now remember, we were flat here and rounded through here. We're going to kerf cut our piece of 1/4 inch melamine through this section right here, and then we're going to nail it on, just staple it on across all of our pieces. We'll put some glue on it, nail it down, and that will give it the base for our piece of formica, which will be the top of our sawhorse and the part that will be smooth and ready for our stuff to go on. So first things, let's do this. Let's get an idea of what we need. We need a piece that is basically going to be 23 inches wide. Yeah, I think 23 inches wide is going to give us everything that we need. Let's go 23.5 just to be sure. We can always trim it. But 23.5, and then our 49 inches long is the width of our 1/4 inch melamine, and we made our top 48 3/4, and we'll just trim that when we get all done also. So let's get started on making our kerf cuts. We're getting ready now to do our kerf cut. We've got our piece cut to size. Just to refresh your memory, what a kerf cut is a cut that does not go all the way through the thickness of the material that you're cutting. It weakens one side of it and allows it to be easily bent. Now typically if I was kerf cutting a piece of 3/4 inch, say a piece of pine, like we put this together, if I was kerf cutting a piece of 3/4 inch pine, I would cut 3/4 of the way through this 3/4 inch piece. This saw blade is 1/8 of an inch wide. I would make a cut 8 inches. I would leave an 8 inch space, an 8 inch cut, or an 1/8 of an inch cut, an 1/8 of an inch space, an 1/8 of an inch cut. Because this is 1/4 inch and because our curve is not very severe, I'm going to go an 1/8 of an inch cut, a 1/4 of an inch space, an 1/8 of an inch cut, and I'm going to do that all the way across the back side of my board out to about 3.5 inches from the outside edge, because remember our angle was straight and then we only curved the center section. So we're going to have straight on the outside, curve in the middle. We'll start by putting a cut right down the middle and then space out 1/4 of an inch and flip it every time we cut. So let's just watch as we go through. Our piece is 23.5 wide. Yes, 23.5 wide. So our center cut is going to be 11 3/4 of an inch. I better check that and make sure. 11 3/4. Yeah, 11 3/4. My math still works. Okay, 11 3/4, and we're going to center our 11 3/4 cut on the center of our saw blade. We're going to make one cut, and then we're going to bring our fence in each time as we make a cut and continue to make our cuts. And like I say, we'll make one cut, we'll turn it around, make another cut, and we'll just do that all the way through. So let's get ready to go. 11 3/4 to the center of our blade. There we are. Now, when you're doing a kerf cut or you're doing anything like this, like a dado cut or a kerf cut, it's important to keep your pressure on your piece of material as you're cutting so that the cut is even depth all the way across. And so I'm going to be pushing down on my material over the top of the saw blade. Now, because I have my saw blade set way low and I know the thickness of my material, you're probably not thinking about that's being safe, but it is safe because I know how deep my material is, I know how deep my cut is, and I know that I'm not going all the way through. And you have to keep that pressure even, and there's no other way to do it but to hold it down. And there's our first cut. You can see I use this piece of melamine for something else. We're not going to worry about all the lines on it. It doesn't make any difference. But there's our first kerf cut. Let's set 1/4 of an inch in. And there's our kerf cuts getting started right there. Okay, I'll go ahead and finish our kerf cuts, and then we'll come back when we're all done. We have completed the kerf cut. Let me show you what we did. You can see all the little cuts that have been made on the back side, and you can see how that has now made our piece of 1/4 inch pliable so that we can nail it down. What we've done is I've marked halfway through on this top of this, and I've marked a line halfway through. I've marked a line to line up with our ribs. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our small crown stapler, we're going to start in the center, and then we're just going to work our way out. We're going to glue it. We're going to just work our way out, and we're going to glue and nail this piece of 1/4 inch melamine. Now, I sanded the melamine with my sander to kind of knock off the finish a little bit because we're going to be gluing a Formica piece, a plastic laminate, and we want it to be able to stick real good, so we wanted to take off the polished edge of take off the polished finish of the melamine so that our contact adhesive will stick real good. So anyway, let's just watch as I go through and glue and nail this piece down, and then we'll move on from there. We'll glue along this edge right at the very last. That way the glue won't have a chance to dry before we get there, because this is going to take a little bit of time. Speaking of time, just so you know how much it takes, it took me about 20 minutes to do my kerf cut of this 1/4 inch piece. So it's not a real fast process, and you just have to work your way through. Okay. One there and line it up, and come back over here and line it up, and there. And then you just kind of work your way out from the center. And you can see how, as I'm stapling this down, that it begins to follow the profile of the ribs that we made, and we're now creating that round barrel shape top to our sawhorse. I'll go ahead and finish up now. Okay, just like that, starting to look pretty good. We're going to take our sander to it again and just kind of knock off some of the little burrs from the staples before we glue down our plastic, and then we're ready to glue down the plastic. We'll do that next. Okay, with our 1/4 inch all stapled on and sanded out, ready to go, we're ready to put our plastic laminate top on. This is our plastic laminate. There's the front side of it. We're going to spray a contact adhesive. This is just some contact adhesive, 3M, that we bought from Amazon. And we're just going to spray this. Then we'll spray this. You have to allow for it to dry so that it's kind of tacky to your finger. And then you're ready to stick it down. So let's just go ahead and get started. Now you can use a water-based contact adhesive that you just put on with a roller or a brush. It doesn't make any difference what you do as far as which kind of contact adhesive you use. The spray is just nice and easy, and I happen to have it. So that's why we're doing spray adhesive. And we just, you got to make sure you got a good coat on both surfaces, because the glue sticks to the glue. Make sure we get plenty on there so that we are completely coated. Okay, there we are on that. We'll set this off to the side. You got to make sure you keep it clean. You don't want to get any dust or dirt on it, because that will get into the
make sure you get your edges real good. I'm going to swing this around so that I can get the other half.
Okay. Boy, I had just enough. All right, this only takes just a few minutes to dry, but we've got to let it dry on both surfaces, and then we're ready to stick it down. Okay, it's been just about 5 minutes, and so we're ready to apply our plastic. Now, we want to be very careful, because once it sticks, it's down. And we'll start right there, and we'll just work our way across like that. Same on this side here. And I cut my plastic extra big so that I could trim it to the size. You don't want to cut it exactly the right size, because once it's stuck, it's stuck. And so you want to make sure you're a little extra big so that you can trim after you have it all stuck down. J-roller works really well to rub out the plastic and make sure that all of that glue is stuck down good. Okay, I'm going to trim this and get it cleaned up, and then we're going to come back and we're going to put the legs on it, and be able to have our sawhorse ready to go to work. Get this workhorse sawhorse to work. All right. Very nice. See you in a minute. Okay, there we are. Our plastic is all on. It adhered very well. I cleaned it with a file and sanded the edges so there's no sharp edges. And we've got a great top to our sawhorse. Now let's get ready to put the feet on that we've already made, just like we had planned. Like I say, we'll put these on here, we'll center them, we'll nail through here, and we'll put some screws.
Okay.
Again, like I say, we're using 1¼ inch grabbers here to mount our legs to the inside of our end piece. As you can see, we already have the legs on that side. I'll show you how we did it. We marked some centering lines here. And there we are, we're centered. We put some nails to hold it in place, and now we'll finish anchoring it with some 1½ inch grabber screws. Just like that. We'll get that all put together, and then I'll show you how we're going to make some support pieces that will go in here that will give it some additional strength as it's moved around the shop and working. Okay, our final piece is a stretcher between the two legs that will go like that and be nailed and screwed from both sides. So let's put that in. And let's use our little square here to make sure we got it correct, right up and down, and we do. Okay. And we'll put a couple of screws from each end. Again, our 1¼ inch grabber. I love magnetic tips so I can pick screws up off the ground. All right. Let's put it down on the ground, see how it looks. Now that we have our Outfeed sawhorse done, you can see what a great addition that this would make to a shop. It's about the same height as our table. It's smooth on top so the material will go across it nice and easy. I'm going to show you how I'm going to use it in my garage shop. I'm going to put it off to the side of my table saw like this, so that when I'm running wide stock across my table, I have support out here. If I was running a really long piece and needed it back here, I could use it for support there. Or if I was running a real long piece out to the front, I could put it out front. It's just very versatile, lightweight, easy to move around, and such a great addition to any shop. This is going to be a great addition to my shop, and I hope it might be a great addition to your shop also. And that's why we build things like this on Woodworking with Wes.